Thank you for those statements. In that same chapter on vows, you have a section entitled How Dark a Night. You wrote that one thing that is very important to know in marriage is that there is always a way out, and the way out is not divorce. What is the way out?
Well, the way out is total abandonment. And it's the same in prayer. You know, continually in life we run up against problems that are too much for us. And we think, oh no, what am I going to do now? And we get into fear and anxiety. Well, the way out is to come before the Lord and completely let go of whatever it is. You know, I don't have the wisdom for this. I don't have the strength for it, but you do, Lord. And by your Holy Spirit, will you empower and equip me, or will you give me wisdom, or will you show me what to do? That is the life of prayer. It's continually letting go of our own, being able to solve things on our own strength, or you know, love the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. And that's what happens in marriage too. The way out is of any difficulty is to, you know, it's like games in which you have a wild card. That's your chance to play the wild card, you know, or get out of jail free. Instead of insisting on my way, I'm just gonna give up. I'm gonna give up what I think I want, and I'm gonna let go and let God. You know, it's very easy to relate to God. I mean, he's the nicest person in the whole world. The nicest person imaginable. So why wouldn't he be easy to relate to? Loving God is like rolling off a log. But the problem is that we're all big-time log rollers. And we're exerting all our effort to stay on top of that log. And, you know, in a log rolling competition, you're really trying to throw the other person into the water and stay on top yourself. And so we've got all these projects and all these ideas of what we need and what we want. And we're trying to keep that thing spinning. Well, let go. Let your little empire collapse. And everything becomes easy. And again, your partner is the person God has given you to teach you and coach you in the art of love. And so this person really is like God to you. I don't want to make too much of that, but this is your opportunity with someone who has skin on to do what you're trying to do in prayer, which is let go of all your little projects and really find some reality and discover who you really are.
It's interesting. I laugh when you stated that God is the kindest and he should be the easiest to relate to. That is so true. But I think the problem is, generally speaking, I think for many of us, if not most, and maybe even all, we're not taught to to believe that, to see that, to understand that, to internalize that, and to practice that. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have so many of the problems that we have in the world today, because that is a very true statement. And if we would indeed just talk to him and just relate to him on that level like that, then things in this world would be, and even our individual lives would be a lot better.
You know, God is crazy about you and about me. He loves us with this really wild, incredible passion. And he started this whole thing, you know, the whole universe, and he created us, and it was all his idea. And so he's not sitting back there, you know, just twiddling his thumbs, wondering how it's going to turn out. He passionately loves us. He's passionately committed to blessing us and to making this whole thing work out. He's passionately committed to blessing our marriage. He has entered into a covenant with us to save us and take us to heaven to live with him eternally in bliss. And it's the same in marriage. He's committed himself to our marriages with unshakable promises. So this is, I know there's no marriage, there's supposed to be no marriage in heaven, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to know my wife in heaven. And something of the depth, well, I think our relationship obviously will be even deeper than it is now, and it will carry on for all eternity. So that's the kind of thing this is. It's in order to build a gigantic skyscraper, you need to begin with an equally, or with a deep enough foundation. And that's what we're doing now. We're digging the foundation for something that is going to last forever.
Yes, and actually in your book, you reference that scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 that talks about, now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. So that in heaven, the knowledge, the knowing of each other, it will be even on a greater level than it is now. And that's most definitely something to look forward to, especially when you see how as humans we can treat each other, and we can just kill each other and not understand the value of life, the sanctity of life. It will be a deeper level of knowledge of our connectedness in God, in heaven, far more than it is now, obviously. You also mentioned in that same chapter of vows that you have a section that's entitled Love with a Focus. It says, what has God ordained that the focus of love should be in marriage? What is that focus?
The focus is one other person. You know, that's part of I think we all have cold feet as we're maybe thinking about getting married. And the problem is the road suddenly becomes so narrow. You know, from playing the field, you're suddenly faced with one person, and the thought of living your whole life with one person. You know, it's maybe the same in thinking of your job, your career, or your vocation. You know, what is it that I want to do with my life? And with all the possibilities and all the maybe gifts that I have, You know, I have a 34-year-old daughter who has so many talents and gifts, and she's done a lot of things, but she hasn't, I think she's still trying to find, is there one thing that I can give all my heart to in terms of work in this world and serving the Lord? And both she and her husband are searching for that kind of fulfillment. But you only find it in a narrow place. That's why the Lord says the way is narrow and only a few find it. There's only one person you can be, and that's you. And it's like entering through a keyhole that opens a great treasure room. But that keyhole is very narrow. And you have to let go of everything that is not, that doesn't fit through that narrow space. And so in that sense, the focus of marriage, suddenly all your efforts to grow in love become dependent, focused, dependent upon how you relate to this one other person. And if you think of the focus of a magnifying glass, focusing the rays of the sun, just a small little magnifying glass can start a fire. The focus is very intense.
Okay, if marriage really is the purest and at the same time the most practical worldly metaphor of the Lord's own covenant love, then why is it that the New Testament appears to advise against marriage?
I once heard it said that if you want to be a pastor, don't become a pastor unless you absolutely have to, unless there's nothing else you can do.
Wow.
And I felt the same way about being a writer. There was nothing else I wanted to do. Nothing else really. I suppose there were other things I could have done, but I wouldn't have been fooling myself doing anything else. And I would advise a young writer, don't go into this unless you absolutely have to. It's too demanding. Now, if you're really called to it, to being a writer or a pastor or whatever, then those demands become very freeing. But remind me of the question again.
No, you're on the right track. It's if marriage is the worldly metaphor of the Lord's own covenant,
yes.
then why does the New Testament appear to advise against it? And you're answering it in a very good way that I don't think you even mentioned in your book.
I think Paul goes on at length about how he wants, really what he wants is for everyone to be like himself, unmarried and totally committed to Christ. But he allows that marriage, might be a good thing for some people if you can't, if you really can't do without it, then he allows marriage as being a good thing. But I think really the Lord must have been laughing when Paul wrote that, because I think I think God's real point was that, don't do this unless you really have to, unless you are so in love that you cannot live without this other person. And not in a neurotic sort of a way, but in a way that I think it's not always possible, but it's so desirable to have full assurance as you enter into a marriage. When my daughter was making a big decision in her life, she asked for 10 signs from God if this was the right thing. And she got her 10 signs. She got more than 10 signs.
Wow.
And, I remember one of them was we were driving in the direction of the city where she was thinking of moving, and a rainbow appeared in the sky, like over the place where that city was. Things like that. And, the Lord loves to speak to us. He loves to reassure us. He loves us to have certainty about things, because he has said that he will be with us and bless us. And so look for, if you're thinking of getting married, look for those signs. And if you can enter into marriage with a firm sense of, yes, the Lord has spoken about this. He's given me these promises to stand on. You're going to need those promises in years to come. And I would say that about every decision we make in our lives. Ask the Lord, and He will give you those assurances. You don't have to blunder alone,
And I think that the Apostle Paul clearly succeeded in getting us to seriously contemplate marriage, if we choose to, when we read what he states, because it gives you pause. It gives you a reason to think, well, should I enter into this? So he clearly, in my opinion, was successful with that, because he doesn't say, oh, just get married. It's wonderful. It's great. He doesn't.
Yeah.
And so he does give pause to have people to consider, should I remain as I am, as a single, and totally commit myself to God, or should I share myself with someone else, and also work on behalf of the Lord, do the Lord's work? So he does, I believe, succeed in that as well. Okay, and now your next chapter is about sex. It's beautiful, it's refreshing, it's pure, it's clean, it's just, it is amazing. I'm going to state a few things in it that you wrote. You wrote about many concepts, including the glory of the naked human body to be discovered in marriage, in our eyes and souls. You wrote that sex is for the healing of shame, from Genesis 2:25. Touching the Creator. Sex is touching the Creator. Genesis 2:21 through 22. It's receiving another person's body, our spouse's body, as a gift. And you also wrote about the healing properties of sex based on the anatomy of the human body, which I had never seen before in my life. And I'm not going to ruin it for anyone who's going to read the book, but I highly encourage anyone to read this book, because for that alone, it's just amazing how God showed that to you, about the anatomy of the human body in the sexual act, going back to Genesis, and the healing aspect of it. So what I'm gonna do is allow everybody else to have their own joyous awakening as they read this section, the entire book, as I did. Now, what we are going to talk about, you have a section in the chapter, the same chapter about sex. It's entitled Viva la Différence. And you state that a couple should accept the inherent oppositeness to exist and to allow the poles to exist and in a certain sense to remain apart rather than always striving to force them together. Let me say that again. A couple should accept that they have inherent oppositeness, allow those to exist and allow the poles to exist, and in a certain sense to remain apart rather than always striving to force them together. Why is this important?
Men and women are different. And it may be that that difference is nowhere more apparent or exposed, perhaps, than in the act of lovemaking. Male and female sexual responses are very different. And I think it takes, you certainly discover that in sex itself, but perhaps where you discover it the most is in talking to your partner about your lovemaking, and which is something a lot of couples, well, I think every couple finds difficult to do. It's perhaps the most intimate thing that we do. And to talk about it, well, how do you find words? How do you describe what's going on to the other person who is so different? So a lot of couples end up in counseling to get help with that. Read books, all kinds of things. But the point is that yes, we are different, and that's something to celebrate. That's not the problem. That's the amazing thing about it. It's like a battery has a positive and a negative terminal, and that's what makes it work. Mm-hmm. That's what conveys the charge that makes the machinery work. And so there's great delight, ecstasy in discovering how to make that current connect with your partner, and there's a lot of psychology involved, and there's a lot of just plain physical stuff, hormones and body parts, and that's the way it is. That's how God has designed it. We are made in His image, not just as individuals, but as couples. Male and female, He made them in His image. And so the marriage bed is the place where we explore how to make that connection work. And when it does work, it's so amazing. That's all I can say.
Okay. And they can read the rest of what you've stated in your book because it's very well stated. Your next chapter, it's on submission. And you wrote, if people understood exactly how radical is the curtailment of independence in marriage, there could never be any thought of divorce. Divorce would never be seen as a sign, divorce would be seen as a sign of suicide. But then, if people understood the true depth of self-abnegation that marriage demands, there would perhaps be far fewer weddings. For marriage too would be seen as a form of suicide. It would be seen not as a way of augmenting one's comfort and security in life, but rather as a way of losing one's life for the sake of Christ. What do these statements mean? Because to be honest with you, we've heard the opposite in most cases in our lives.
The opposite being
That
what?
marriage should be for one's comfort and security, and that you should be able to you should not lose yourself. The focus is not on losing yourself for Christ. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think we maybe not accept it, but we certainly run into it in life itself. That this is not it's not a what do they say, a garden of roses, or it's not a bowl of cherries. Yeah. This thing of life is so difficult. There isn't a day goes by where we don't run into some difficulty, and then there are whole periods where we wrestle with deep difficulties. And so why should we think that going into marriage that it's going to be any different? If anything, this is a more extreme form of life, and the difficulties are going to increase or be magnified. Now, at the same time, as always happens in life, the comfort and the joy that's possible is also magnified. But let's not underestimate the inherent difficult nature of life. And let's accept that when we become marriage, that's going to be the case. That's going to continue. And we are going to have to work through these things. And the way we work through them now is together. That's the great thing. If we continue to want to try to solve the problems on our own, it's not going to work. But it's as we come together with our partner and really let go of our own agendas and work together as one. That's where the machine works as it should. And life is never easy, but it's amazing.
So divorce could be a sign of suicide, but also marriage too could be seen as a form of suicide as well.
Yeah, it's another way of saying it. You're abandoning you're abandoning what you thought was yourself. As a single person, you've found you're not, as I was, I thought I was happy as a bachelor, but I wasn't as happy as I could be. There was more, and I didn't know it. And so marriage was a form of suicide, putting to death putting to death who I thought I was, and being willing to embrace, oh, maybe I can be this different person. Maybe that's who I really am. And that is what I found, that I'm happier, more well-adjusted, more at peace as a married man than I ever would have been in a monastery. My wife is my monastery. You know, if I could, I wonder if I could read the poem
Yes, of course.
that happens at the end of the book. Because it really, in a way, it sums up the whole book for me. It's called The Lover's Hermitage. A hermitage being a place where a hermit lives all alone. But this is the lover's hermitage. Love, you are my hermitage, my dwelling forever. Just as a happy bachelor may aspire to be a hermit, so as your husband, do I dream of being more married. Your body is a path leading through a golden wood. Your love is a clearing in the center of the forest. Here have I built my home, here in you alone. With you I know a solitude deeper than my own. One table, one rocking chair by the hearth of you, and in your face a window brighter than the sky. Are not your arms a shelter made of all my longings? How gladly shall I spend my life in the cool, still hush of you. Your words are quieter than my thoughts. Your moods are the shade beneath dancing poplars. When you smile, I'm warmed like earth in the sun. Your laugh is the brook at my front door. Gentler are you than breath, much stranger than death. Just to touch your hair is more peaceful than sleep. Where else could I die but in your brown eyes? Surely all my wandering finds its end in you. Love, you are my hermitage, my dwelling forever.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Did you write that or did you get that from another
No, I
source?
wrote.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Did you write it for your wife or was that something the Lord
Yes,
just impressed
yeah,
you with?
that was for Karen.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. See, you do have a romantic side and you're a confirmed bachelor there and probably thought you did not. So love brought something out of you that maybe you did not know was even there.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I'm always thinking of the next book I want to write, and someday I want to write a book on the Song of Songs, which is probably my favorite book in the Bible, and but it's really, you know, it's all about our romance with God. But I will be much better equipped to write that book as a happily married man.
Yes. And actually your poem, it reminds me of the Song of Solomon and that type of writing. So I think you need to go for it. Go for the challenge. There's no
Yeah,
time like the present.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, we just have a few more. In the same chapter, you mentioned about submission. You show a connection between Job 121, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Luke 9:48, he who is least among you, says Jesus, he is the greatest. At John 3, 30. He must increase, but I must decrease. These are all scriptures that you reference in the same chapter. Can you show the connection between those three scriptures and marriage?
Well, again, it's all about humbling. You know, we live right beside a beautiful waterfall. If I could turn the screen, well, I don't think you can see it because of the glare, but just outside the window, not far away, is a beautiful waterfall. And water always seeks the lowest place. You know, it wants to go lower and lower and lower until finally it reaches the sea.
Mm.
And that's what we should be as Christians, always wanting to go lower, because that's, you know, once the water gets to the sea, then it rises through evaporation, and it, you know, it gets to go up, and so there's this cycle. But the way up is the way down. If we want to rise higher, get lower. That's why we go on our knees to pray. Or sometimes prostrate before the Lord. You have to get down low in your marriage, and then you'll see the way through. And so, you know, a lot of men make a big deal about the verse, wives, submit to your husbands. But the verse just before that is submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And that's the governing verse. It's so necessary to love, to submit to others. And in submitting, we don't, you know, it's not the same as becoming a doormat. Submission is actually the strongest position. The person who can truly submit is exercising has a very strong character. They're doing it out of confidence in who they are. And that's the way of love.
Beautiful. In your chapters, the final chapter, it's entitled Death. You make a connection between marriage and death. What is that connection? And I have a second part to the question. I don't know if you want to just answer that one, or do you want me to just go ahead with the second part as well?
What's the second? Oh, the second part is...
What connection is there between what Mary did by showing Jesus, love for Jesus, by pouring the expensive ointment on his living flesh, which you reference in John 12:3, and marriage? So do you want to answer them both together or separately? So
yeah, I think they belong together.
Okay.
Mary, in her act of pouring the ointment on Jesus, was preparing him for burial while he was still healthy and alive. And I think that's an essential act in marriage, where we recognize that the other person could be taken from us any day. We're not necessarily going to grow old together. Anything can happen in this world. Life is so precious. And in marriage, I honor that preciousness, that sanctity of life, by treating my wife as if this could be our last day together. I think I have a line in the book that at least one kiss a day should be planted on bone. And my wife loves to laugh about that, about how, you know, sometimes when I'm looking at her with love, she'll she'll wonder if I'm really looking at her skeleton. Uh, that yeah, it's just recognizing that this moment that we have together, this day, is so precious. And I'm just going to read the last sentence in the book, or the last couple. Now is the time to eulogize, now the time to deck with flowers. Today is the day to carry to its rest the whole weight of our love's flesh upon our shoulders. And so I don't save the eulogy for when Karen may be gone. I tell her today how wonderful she is and how much I love her. And I act towards her as if you know, we don't know how long this is going to, how long we'll have together.
Okay, and you reference Ezekiel 37:2 in this same chapter on death, where Ezekiel was taken to the valley of dry bones. What connection is there between this scripture and marriage?
Yeah, the valley of dry bones. Well, for Ezekiel, that was the place of resurrection. You know, he saw with his own eyes, he saw the Lord resurrect those bones. He saw the flesh forming around them, and they stood up on their feet and they were alive. He essentially saw the miracle of life, of creation, enacted before his eyes. And so that's, you know, I have a discussion with my daughter about what is the heart of our faith. And I always say, for me, the heart of my faith is the cross. And she always says that the heart of faith for her is the resurrection. Mm. And the older I get, the more I think, maybe she's right. Maybe she's right. Resurrection, to focus on the cross is to focus on the difficulties we must go through now, and to face them with courage and humility and so on. To focus on the resurrection is to celebrate where we are going. We are going to be raised. We're going to, well, I was going to say we're going to die, but the Bible, Jesus says, you won't even experience death. You will be raised. I am the resurrection and the life. So, yeah, I think it's essential in marriage to have that, to have that knowledge of, yes, death will us part, but resurrection will raise us again.
That's the hope that we have in our Lord Jesus Christ, and it's a beautiful hope indeed. You actually started writing this book, The Mystery of Marriage, as iron sharpens iron, before you got married, which I didn't know until you stated that today. And then I guess you completed it a few years after you had been married. So you've been married about 39 years. Is there anything that you would like to say to us now that you did not get a chance, or I guess not that you didn't get a chance to put in the book, because the book, it's been almost 4 decades, but something that you did not put in the book, but you've learned over the past 4 decades almost, or God has expanded your knowledge of, given you additional knowledge of? Is there anything else that you would like to share with us this afternoon?
You know, strangely enough, I don't think there's anything I would add. After the book came out, about 10 or 15 years later, I had a chance to edit it for a new edition. And so I went through the whole thing, and I did tighten up the language, just make the sentences flow better and things like that. But I really didn't change the ideas at all. And I don't think I added anything. And that was after maybe 15 years. And I still feel the same, that somehow in God's grace, at the very beginning of this marriage journey, he gave me this blueprint, this kind of full revelation of what I would be living for the next decades. And not due to any wisdom of my own. I think the Lord covered the territory. And yeah, with all the experiences that Karen and I have had over the years, and I mean, we've gone to seminars, we've gone to different churches, we've done counseling, and all these things. But I could talk about things that I've learned through all of those means, but all of them, I think, in some way are covered in that book that I wrote, or began to write before we were married.
And I think I totally agree. I think that God has given you an amazing gift, an amazing revelation. And it's like you stated, it wasn't where, here's my marriage, this is what I've learned. It was spending time with God, and God saying, this is what I want you to know, and I want you to share, and this is what you need to live out for the rest of your life. And so I think that if people buy this book and they prayerfully read it, they definitely will be awakened to new concepts, to deeper concepts, which are actually in the Bible, which are actually scriptural, which would have an amazing effect on them, whether they're having problems with their marriage, whether they are contemplating marriage. I think that this book would just benefit people, and not just marriage, relationships, because the scriptures that you use actually govern healthy relationships in general. And then you did mention in the book that marriage is the foundation, the human relationship, that's the foundation for our society. And so that's exactly why I wanted to have you on this show, because in our society, as we all know, we're having a lot of problems, and we're going to have to do some things differently than we've been doing them. The path that we're on is leading us to a place that I don't think that we need to continue to go. And so I thank you for allowing God to use you. I thank you for just being open. I mean, people say women are the ones who are open and just allow themselves to be naked and whatnot, but you just allowed God to just use you in an amazing and massive way in this book. And I want to thank you for coming here today. Now, I know that you blog, and I know that you're contemplating writing another book on the Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs. And I know that also on your website, you have a nice little treat, a nice little gift for us, because I've already downloaded my free gift, and it's called The Mystery of Children. And I've started to read it, but I'm not anywhere near finished. And so far, I'm really loving it just as much as The Mystery of Marriage. So we would like to encourage anyone to go to your website and to be able to get that free download. But also, I inquired as to whether or not you do seminars, because I think that you're definitely someone that God could use to do seminars. So if you can tell us about your availability, tell us about how they can go and get that free download. I would appreciate that at this time.
Okay, the website is mikemasonbooks.com. And yes, I do blog regularly. Usually every second week, I come up with a new blog post. And I don't do seminars or marriage counseling. I have always felt, well, one thing I've felt is that I'm much more a writer than a speaker. There's never enough time to write, to do all the writing that I want to, and speaking doesn't have the same draw for me. So I've stuck pretty much to writing, and especially when it comes to the marriage book. Somehow I felt that this was such sacred territory that I didn't want to. I didn't want to add or distort anything that was in the book. And I wanted, especially in the early years, I wanted to protect our own marriage. You know, I think people who enter into marriage ministry can come under enormous pressure and attack. And I just felt that wasn't the route for us. That there's enough pressure and attack in my writing ministry, and that's my central gift, and that's what I focus on. Yeah, and I have many other books. MikeMasonBooks.com. You can read all about them, and yeah.
Okay. Well, I've definitely enjoyed being here with you this afternoon. And once I've read more of your books, I definitely would like to invite you to come back again. Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. Mike Mason, the author of nonfiction and fiction books for the past 3 decades. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
And I would just like to remind our listening audience, what has been, by the grace of God, does not have to continue to be. And what hasn't been, by the grace of God, can be. This is Cynthia Talbert. You're listening to The Awakening. Thank you for joining us. Until the next time, goodbye.